now, welcome to the Patriot Pulse podcast.
And good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, April 8th, and this is episode of 254 of the Patriot Pulse podcast. And just as a reminder, we also simulcast to our old page, Two Guys Drinking Coffee on Facebook. Fred, good morning. I almost felt we got guests. We're going to be talking about Canada and Alberta in particular. I almost feel like we should have played "O Canada" after our national anthem there. So I will apologize to any of our Canadian viewers for not playing "O Canada" at the same time. But as I said, we're going to be talking about Alberta, Canada, and the freedom movement there, the movement to become an independent Alberta. And today we have on three guests. We got Angela Tabak, and I hope I pronounced that right, Angela. I forgot to ask you. Kathy Flett and Fergus Hodgson. And we're going to be talking about all things Alberta and the movement to become independent of Ottawa. But before we get started, let's do a little bit of housekeeping as we always do. Please click like, share, subscribe wherever you're finding us. As we say, you find us on two Facebook live feeds. We're live on X and Rumble, Kick and Twitch, and we also are live on our Bradford TV, which is part of OBBM Network. And so you can find us anywhere, but wherever you find us, please click like, share, subscribe, whatever you can do to help us overcome the algorithms that are trying to silence the voice of independent media. Before we get started into the introductions, though, I want to play a little 30-second promo to help us pay the bills here and keep this podcast on the air.
Need to get your brand noticed, remembered, and loved? At Everything Printed Promo, we turn your logo into walking, talking, shareable billboards. Whatever the occasion, we make you look amazing every time. Pens, shirts, drinkware, tech gadgets, you dream it, we print it perfectly. Visit everythingprintedpromo.com or call 888-619-9286 today. First-time customers get 15% off. Let's make your brand unforgettable.
Okay, let me tell you a little bit about our guest today, our new friends. Again, we have three people joining us. First one, Angela, has been involved in the Alberta independence movement since 2020, when COVID convinced her exactly how far gone Canada had become. And trust me, that is the way it was in the U.S. too. Last year, she and Kathy Flett founded the Alberta Women's Independence Network. Angela's particular interest in the independence movement is centered on bringing Albertans a sense of community, patriotism, and hope, something that has been missing in Canada for a very long time. Kathy, even in her teen years, she tells us that she's recognized that all was not well in Alberta. Born and raised Albertan, Kathy became a separatist before she knew what that word even meant. All these years later, opportunity knocked to jump into the movement with both feet, and she has not looked back. Having learned more than she bargained for along the way, Kathy also made an incredible friendships, partnering with Angela to create AWIN. She helped take the message of Alberta independence to women, the success of which has Kathy traveling the province with other speakers, sharing the good news of Alberta independence. And finally, we are going to bring on Fergus Hodgson. He is director of Econ Americas and author of Financial Sovereignty for Canadians, Untether Yourself from the Ottawa Leviathan. Although based in Colorado, he is a Canadian citizen with Alberta roots. He holds an MBA in finance from Rice University and is a chartered alternative investment analyst. So let me bring you all on the screen here, and I will say good morning and welcome to all of you, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Good morning.
It's a privilege, Mud.
It's great to have you here, and you're gonna, y'all, our audience is going to notice right away that Fergus does not sound like your typical Canadian, so I had to quiz him on that. And Fergus is actually a native Kiwi. Is that what the New Zealanders are still calling the Kiwis?
Yeah, we're proud to be Kiwis. Sure.
Yeah. Well, God bless you. I'm glad you're here. I love the accent too. So let me jump right in. We're here to talk about an independent Alberta, but and I've been following this for quite some time. I mean, I probably go back at least a year or so when I've been first introduced to this idea, and I'm just following your movement. So, and I'm going to throw these questions out. Feel free, whoever wants to jump in. It can be kind of a free for all. Tell me, when did the movement actually start? Because I keep hearing back, it seems to go back and back. But when did it start, and what was the impetus that actually supercharged it, if you will?
Started in 1905 when we became a province. The story about how we became a province is really the impetus of it. We are one of two here in Canada that did not negotiate our way into Confederation. We were actually colonized. We were told this is how it's going to be. And it wasn't under the greatest of circumstances for the people that were living here at the time. And so ever since then, there's kind of been this resentment that builds up over the years, and then it wanes, and then it builds up again, and then it wanes. And here we are today seeing that desire to be our own nation stronger than it's ever been.
Oh, cool. All right. That's a good explanation.
Jim, may I have a crack at that one?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so that's correct. However, there are a few key parts, let's say, in the trajectory that have brought this to bear. The National Energy Program of the late 1970s by Justin Trudeau's father brought economic pain to Alberta and demonstrated, let's say, the tension across the country and the way the other provinces were feeding off Alberta. However, in my opinion, the last 25 years have laid bare the cultural differences between the provinces. They have become starker. And that is when the support for this has really grown. It's gone much beyond just the economic pain and a realization that there are just a values disparity across the provinces of Canada.
That seems to be a common theme that I've read when I've been studying what's going on up there, that Albertans are feeling like, Ottawa's, you can use them as the target on this, but the rest of Canada is kind of using Alberta for your natural resources and it's just taking it. You can't have a good relationship when it's all take. So you want to weigh in on that, Angela?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, Alberta has been the golden goose for such a long time. And our main industry, well, we have a couple of main industries, but our main industry is oil and gas. And, the East has no problem taking, the revenues from that industry and at the same time suppress it with all kinds of ridiculous policy, ideological, whatever you want to call it. So it's like they've got their hands around the neck of the golden goose, but saying you're still going to lay these eggs, even though we're basically killing you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So, Kathy, you had mentioned this has been going on since Alberta was forced into the fold, if you will. But there's something that obviously triggered. I mean, who started the movement to say, okay, we're going to get this, we're going to try to get these signatures? Because as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've just accomplished that major milestone of getting enough signatures to get on the ballot. How long has that been going on? When did the signatures start and the movement start, says, hey, we're really going to finally do this, people. Let's get ball rolling. So
sure. Yeah, it actually began like this, I guess, this chapter of the movement began in 2019 when Trudeau won again. And Albertans were like, okay, that's it. We're done now. We're done now for sure. And there was the Wexit movement that came on board, and that kind of caught lightning in a bottle, and then it fizzled out. But then there were some other things that happened along the way. And so now we fast forward to this year, and our provincial government really heard the frustrations and the cries of the people, and so worked hard to do what they could to give us some tools to use so that we could take this on, that the people that could be, by the people for the people, if you will, to get this initiative going, this citizens-led initiative. And so one of the guys who's done a lot of work behind the scenes to help educate Albertans as to why we need to do this, Mitch Sylvester, took on that challenge, and he approached an organization that's here called Elections Alberta. So they manage all of anything election here. They're the ones that kind of manage that, and use the tools that the provincial government gave us to get this citizen-led initiative going, this petition to have a referendum. And so in January, we were able to kind of hit the ground running, if you will, and gather these signatures. And the goal that we had to get was 178,000. We've surpassed that. I don't know how many we have, but we've surpassed that. And once we have enough signatures, which we do, and Elections Alberta has said, yep, okay, you guys have met all the benchmarks that you need to, then that goes back to our provincial government, who then says, okay, we will have this referendum so people can have their say in the fall. And it's interesting because I think that we're the only province that has that legislation for the people to actually be able to do this. And so that's kind of a long story short. And it's been fascinating because it really is the people that are doing this. We don't have a leader in this movement. We have a whole bunch of us that won't shut up about it, but we don't have a leader. And and we also, I love to point out to people that the movement, this independence movement that's been around now for, over 120 years, has made it this far, finally, for the first time ever, because quite frankly, we left the politicians out of it. We pushed them to give us the tools we need to get the job done ourselves. And here we are, we're getting it done.
I didn't realize that. So the idea that you can create an independence movement, that's more provincial, or rather than within the Canadian Constitution or the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and all that.
We don't have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
We have a nice paper that says Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Well, speaking, all right, I've got to ask this question because this was a new term to me. I had to look it up. On the notes that I got, Fergus, from you, I think you had said about the Westminster system of government and why it doesn't work for Alberta. First of all, for our listeners, can you explain what the Westminster system of government is, and then go further in what you said there about it not working for Alberta?
Well, sure. I mean, that was not my point. That's the British system, right, that Canada inherited. But I think Kathy wanted to address that topic.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, whoever wants to there. It was under some notes there. So whoever wants to, because again, is that Westminster the idea of Parliament or what?
Yeah, exactly. So our Parliament is made up of two houses, right? We've got the House of Commons, where our members of Parliament sit. Those are the guys we vote in, guys and gals, that we vote in. And then we've got the Senate, which is supposed to be the sober second thought. But those positions are appointed. We can't vote them in. We certainly can't vote them out. The Prime Minister appoints them. And so it's also supposed to be representation by population, but nothing could be further from the truth. It is not representation by population at all when you go across the whole country. And so in a nutshell, the way that we're governed, the way that this system works, is that in the East, they actually have twice as many MPs, the ones that are voted in, than we do in the West. So they always outvote us. And for proof of that, the last federal election that we had about a year ago now, the winner was called 8 minutes after our polls closed. So even if we voted for the winner, they didn't need our votes to do it. And then on top of that, the way the Senate, that sober second thought is designed is there's over twice as many senators representing the eastern provinces than there are in the west. And so every bill that goes through Parliament has to go through both houses. Both the MPs and the senators have to vote on it. So either way, the East is always much more represented than we are. And so that's how we got into this situation that we're in. We don't have the strength to vote for what we want to have happen or what is going to matter to us, and instead it just continues to capitulate to the East. So that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah. It's very similar to what we find here in particular states. Pennsylvania, for example, we have a very conservative middle of the state, but the higher population areas like around Pittsburgh, Allegheny County on the west, and Philadelphia, Allentown on the east have the higher populations, so they have more representation in the legislature, and it's very hard to overcome the liberal push from those areas. But it's not impossible. So there's always hope to overcome that. But let me ask you this, because you had mentioned Calgary just briefly. Calgary is the capital of the province, right, or whatever you call it in Canada, but it's a provincial capital. All right, so I got to ask you. So, and I put this in my show notes because we've had Artur Pawlowski, Pastor Artur, on our show before. And as evidenced by the persecution of him when he was speaking out and he was just trying to do church in the streets and feed the people in Calgary, it appears that the Calgary bureaucrats, let's put it that way, are entrenched with. I mean, this is an outsider making this observation. That's why I'm asking you for your clarification. It appears that the Calgary bureaucrats are entrenched with Ottawa, and they're just marching to that same drumbeat. So, what resistance is the Albertan government, the provincial government, presenting to this movement, if any?
I might be able to speak to this. So, just a quick clarification. So, Edmonton is actually the capital.
Okay.
Yeah, the
I'm
provincial
sorry.
capital. That's all right. But we do find, going back to talking about Artur and what he ran into, what are we going to say? The municipal governments of Edmonton and Calgary are often very liberal and in march step with Ottawa and a lot of the ideologies that come out of there. Now, we do have a provincial government at this time led by Premier Danielle Smith, and she has been, as Kathy has talked about, she was willing to put some tools in place where Albertans would have more of a say or the ability to have a citizen-led petition initiative. But she has also done a lot when it comes to pushing back on Ottawa and kind of the where they're overstepping a lot of their, we have provincial rights and we have the federal rights. Well, the federal government, it's a constant problem. It's a constant fight with them because they will overstep their bounds and kind of put themselves where they should not be. And so she has really been pushing against a lot of this Ottawa creep, I guess we could call it, looking at different things when it comes to the province having more say over immigration, stepping away from the Canadian pension plan, which Fergus could probably speak more to that. Having our own policing service rather than the RCMP. So she's in process of doing all these things, which all of these things are really good because if we are to become independent, we're going to have these things in place anyways. Now, to be fair and completely honest here, she is stating that she is not for an independent Alberta state, but rather to have a more sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. Clearly, those of us who are pushing for a completely independent Alberta do not believe that that is is going to fix anything or that it's even possible when we look at the history of Alberta and the different initiatives that have been taken over the past 5 decades, trying to get these things into place, trying to push Ottawa back into their lane. It has always been unsuccessful due to what Kathy outlined to you already, in that it's a math game and the East holds the balance of power. Every federal politician, whether they are from the West or from the East, understand the math, and they understand that if they are to get into power or to remain in power, they must cater to the needs and wants of Eastern Canadians. And this is why Western Canadians are always left to the side. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. Glad that we have a premier that is willing to look at these things and really give it a good push. But until we actually fix the issue in Confederation with the unequal and unfair representation across the country, nothing is going to be fixed. We could have so many things put into place, and that does nothing to stop the next government coming in and undoing everything that has been done. So we're to the point where Alberta independence, that's the only answer that we have right now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hey, just for a reminder, everybody, we do have people on with us live. So just want to, for anybody listening to us live here, if you want to make your comments or if you have a question for our guest today, please put them in the comments there and we will pass them along. And so let me, I gotta ask this question. This is, it's not really a gotcha question, but it's the first thing I thought of way back when I started following your movement. So to make a comparison, the secession of the southern states in the U.S. didn't go well. You know, we fought a civil war over it. So how is this different? And does the Canadian Constitution and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms allow for such an option for the provinces or for Alberta? Or as you had just explained earlier, it's a provincial rule that says you can do this rather than a national rule. So how do you address this? I mean, what if Ottawa says, no, time out, you can't do this, and we're going to force the situation? So I'm assuming somebody's thought of this. So
Yeah,
what's
Jim, we've got very sophisticated people on this now. So first, it is not simply Alberta. I think you misunderstood there a little bit. Alberta has the rules in place for a citizen-led referendum. The
Okay.
Clarity Act, which allows secession, is at the federal level of Canada.
Okay.
In many regards, Alberta benefits from the fact that Quebec has twice attempted this before and come very close to succeeding. Okay. In terms of the southern states seceding from the United States, there's a complicated history there, but one important element is that the southern states did not hold referendums. They did this purely from their own legislatures, whereas Alberta will be doing this in a citizen-led fashion. There's an important element there that I think you misunderstood also, that it is not just disproportionate population. Yes, Alberta only has 12% of Canada's population, but as Kathy was explaining, it's a very convoluted and disproportionate representation, such that even though Alberta has 12%, it has much less influence in the parliament, that it is not per capita or proportional to population. There are many imbalances, deliberate imbalances there. To make the matter worse, what you're seeing with the Alberta independence movement is very much a layman or working man's movement. And that's where you see there's very little representation in either the provincial legislature and zero in the federal parliament that would represent this movement, because you're talking about people who are not part of the professional political class. And in that regards, it's very admirable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what you're saying then is there are, I just want to reiterate this, there are provisions in the federal Canadian
There was a court ruling called the Clarity Act, which sought,
Yeah.
well, just a second now, who actually wrote the Clarity Act? Because I think the court called for it and then the actual Parliament wrote that down.
Yeah, so the Supreme Court came out with what they call the secession case. And this was after the Quebec referendum in 1995. So the government of the day, after that happened, the government of the day went to the Supreme Court of Canada and basically just posed a question and said, can a province within Canada unilaterally secede? And they came back a couple of years later and said, no, unless you meet these two requirements. And one of the requirements is that the province must hold a referendum, and that referendum must be based on a clear question, and also that they must have a clear majority. Thank you. So after that, the government then took that ruling and created what is called the Clarity Act. And basically the Clarity Act just lays out how this is to happen. If a province did hold a referendum with a clear majority, what are the next steps for that province to be able to secede from Confederation?
Okay. I've got a follow-up question to that, because you mentioned the steps involved. The first step is just getting the referendum on the ballot, but if it passes by a majority, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of a sudden Alberta is independent. As I understand, I've been listening to Keith Wilson, as Angela, you pointed out to me, he's a constitutional lawyer up in Canada, and he kind of outlined. But would you, all of you, whoever wants to answer the question, all right, let's assume that is it October 19th? I believe it is. The vote.
Yeah.
All right, let's say that the vote is successful. You get the majority that say, yes, we want to move forward with this. What happens then?
We celebrate. And then after that we've got those votes and we've celebrated that win, that triggers negotiations. So that forces all of the provinces, so all the provincial leaders, we call them premiers, all the premiers to the table. It forces the federal government to the table, and then it also forces First Nations to the table to come and negotiate in good faith. That's what the Clarity Act says. So that's the next step, is all these folks come together and try as best they can to negotiate our departure, nothing less. That's where some people get confused. This is not a and or, like, okay, well, maybe we'll negotiate a better deal. No. That ship has sailed. We negotiate our way out. This is the separation agreement. Now, nobody expects this to actually happen very nicely. We're just being honest about that. We do not expect the other provinces or the federal government to want to say goodbye to their golden goose, right? To their milch cow. And so if those negotiations fail, and there's a plan in place for that, as to, kind of some dates that we're going to give the federal government to sit down and make this work. If that does not happen, the Clarity Act also gives us the ability to unilaterally declare independence. So then we can say, okay, that's it, we're done. We tried. You guys did not want to play ball with us, so we're out. We're going to unilaterally declare which two countries across the globe would be willing to recognize us as our own sovereign nation, our own Republic of Alberta. And then we would probably jokingly look at our own prime minister right now and say, well, how about you start? Because you just recognized Palestine. So how about you be the first to recognize us, knowing that will never happen. But then we would look to the US for that recognition, and then one other country. And then we go and we start building.
Okay. We do have a couple questions here. One is from Diane. I'll just put it up on the screen. As far as your resources, I'm assuming once you do become an independent Alberta, assuming it goes that way, you're going to be owner of all your resources, correct? And sovereign
Correct.
in that stuff. Okay.
Yep.
The answer is yes, but this is untested or uncharted waters. That's why this is some difficulty predicting this. in my opinion, Alberta could declare independence unilaterally and avoid a lot of this, but the attempt is to do this as peacefully as possible and maintain good relations with the rest of Canada.
Okay, so that's a good point, which leads me to my next question. What are some of the risks involved with this? Again, assuming that it goes forward and it goes to its completion, are there pitfalls and risks you really have to be cognizant of and careful with?
Of course, there is some uncertainty to this. Like Fergus said, it's uncharted waters, right?
Yeah.
The question that we always ask to people who are opposing Alberta independence is, well, give us a reason to stay. What would be better for us? Why should we stay? And the only answers that we ever get are those folks who are saying, well, I'm Canadian. I love to be Canadian. I'm patriotic, all those things. And we get that. We understand that. This is a very hard thing that we are asking people to do. And at the same time, when we look at the trajectory that Canada is going, and again, Fergus would be able to speak better to this because economics is his thing. We know where that is going to end up. And the uncertainty of an independent Alberta, is looking so much better than the certainty of where Canada is and where Canada is now going.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a common theme, in this country too. Is that we talk about the tyranny in that goes on even in the U.S. and it's worldwide, but the idea of freedom, with freedom comes responsibility and risk, but you'd rather have that than the certainty of tyranny and oppression as well. So I can certainly see that, but I've got to ask the question too, and I don't even know, we didn't even bring this up, but again, talking with my other Canadian friends, China has a huge influence in Canada. Does it have that in Alberta as well? And if so, is that going to be problematic to this whole thing?
Okay, this is one of the fundamental. You're getting at the real heart of the issue here. Unfortunately, much of Laurentian or Eastern Canada has as its identity anti-Americanism, or being not American. The Prairie provinces are unlike that. In other words, the Prairie provinces share the natural rights view of limited government. And as it stands, China benefits from having this anti-American political class in the Ottawa area who will side with them over the United States. And so long as power and wealth is redistributed away from the Prairie provinces, especially Alberta, to Laurentian Canada, that is a loss for the United States. So the answer is no, Alberta does not have the same, let's say, affinity towards China that Laurentian Canada has, but Alberta's wealth is still going to the pro-Chinese sentiments or the pro-Chinese factions.
Yeah.
Well, right now, because Alberta's wealth is going to the national Canada, which obviously is influenced by China.
Yes.
If and when Alberta becomes independent, I'm assuming that will be able to be cut off. In other words, they're not going to play ball with China. Is that
exactly? Alberta Cannon will be one of the biggest bosom buddy to the United States in terms of being an ally, even more than the likes of Panama or maybe more than Israel. Alberta will be an incredibly close ally to the United States, and yes, that would be a win against the expansionist ambitions of the Chinese Communist Party.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, Harold did have a question too there, Jim. Did you see Harold's question?
Yeah, I did there. I was going to work that. Well, we had mentioned Artur Pawlowski, in Harold just wanted to know, do you all know his current situation or conditions? I know he's been in and out of jail more times than I can count. Is he free today? Do you know?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I haven't heard that he's back in.
Okay, that was just a question I wanted to ask. And
Yeah.
I do get some of his feeds too. So, but he has had his challenges. So, well, all right. So let me segue a little bit, because you had mentioned about other Canadian provinces, or is Saskatchewan doing, or at least talking similarly to what Alberta is doing? Because I've heard the two provinces mentioned in the same breath on a couple of different discussions.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, Saskatchewan, when you look back historically, they have always polled higher than Alberta has when it comes to independent sentiment. And so, although Alberta has been given the tools by our premier to be able to hold the referendum, to do the petitioning, Saskatchewan does not have that in place yet. And so it's my understanding is that they are working on that. The citizens are pressuring their leaders to put that into place so that they can do the same thing. But they are holding independence meetings across that province and having wonderful turnouts. There's a lot of excitement. They're seeing what's happening in Alberta and they're wanting the same. Now you have to understand that Alberta and Saskatchewan are probably the two richest, resource richest areas in Canada, or at least resources that have been developed or where folks are willing to develop. When you look at the uranium that Saskatchewan has, the potash that they have for fertilizer that they export, Alberta is sitting on the third largest oil deposits. And of course, we have a rich agricultural tradition between the two provinces. A lot of times people talk about, well, what if Alberta and Saskatchewan ended up joining together, and what an absolute powerhouse we would be.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
Is that a possibility?
I believe technically we would have to both independently leave Confederation, but then, that could be a possibility where we come together and form one nation, or have two separate nations, but working very closely together.
Yeah, allies, because that almost sounded counterintuitive when somebody first mentioned that I heard earlier, not earlier today, but in another video or something I was watching, where you're going for independence, you're an independent Alberta, and then they want an independent Saskatchewan. Well, if you come together, then you kind of lose your independent identity like that. And it was just a comment that was thrown out that that might not be able to be done for that reason. In other words, I don't know if Albertans have their own identity and say, okay, we want this to be our country, and we certainly support Saskatchewan, but it's just a separatist, still saying separate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It'd be interesting if. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say we do have a lot in common with Saskatchewan. Like we are way more alike than we are different. And in fact, Saskatchewan was the other province that was just brought into Confederation. Like the two of us were at the same time. And there's kind of there's a history with that. And so for us if we did decide to become one country, the two provinces, it would be a good match because we are so similar. But at the same time, that'll be for the citizens of both Alberta and Saskatchewan to decide on their own if that's what they want to do.
Sure. Well, that does kind of lend itself to the idea that, you're playing a long-term game here. This isn't going to be decided next year or the year after. I mean, this is going to be going on. Just looking at Alberta, what is what realistically could be the earliest we could all be saying, look, we have an independent Alberta is its own country now. What, we talking 2 years, 10 years? I mean,
No, we're talking a matter of a couple of months. You've got to realize that all the work is going on right now to hasten this process and have a clear proposal in place to be accepted or rejected, I guess, by Ottawa. And if it is rejected, then to move on to a unilateral declaration. There's no point in wasting time on technicalities or getting stuck in bureaucracy that Ottawa will try to use to stall this process.
Yeah. Keith Wilson made an interesting analogy in one of the videos I watched him. He said it was analogous to a divorce, in that if one party in a divorce disputes it, it doesn't mean that the other party is stuck in the marriage forever. So
Right.
I thought that was a good analogy.
Yeah,
If they
there's a
both
lot of
agree.
similarities there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I'm just checking the timer. We still got about 20 minutes almost. So let me, Fergus, since you're kind of the financial part of this, talk to me. I mean, there's a lot involved with setting up, having your own government, having your own, I mean, if you're your own country, do you still trade in Canadian currency? Do you have your own treasury? Do you have, in other words, what are the logistics of, becoming an independent country of Alberta? Sure.
It's actually not that complicated at all, because the truth is that the vast majority of things are already administered at the provincial level. And I say this all the time. In 1900, there were 60 sovereign nations, and then more recently, there have been more than 200. Okay, so this has happened many times. Further, the financial system of Canada still has provincial regulation in Quebec and Alberta. So it's already provincially legislated there or regulated there, with some controls from Ottawa. But so I actually don't see that as a problem at all. That the small amount that would have to be adjusted for things like embassies and passports, I just think that's minuscule compared to the broader array of government services. Angela did talk about the pension plan. So it's a little bit akin to the Social Security system in the United States, and extracting from that is proving to be more difficult right now than I would like. But already Quebec has its own pension plan, so it's shown that you don't have to be part of the Canadian plan. The reason why it is more complicated in that case is that, much like the U.S. Social Security system, the Canada Pension Plan has built up these unfunded liabilities, so it has debts in the system. And so any new system in Alberta, unfortunately, that follows that will basically bring a debt with it.
Okay. All right. So you can't. So what I hear is, from that point of view, you can't completely separate from the Canadian pension fund. You can, but the thing is that right now. But you're going to have debt that you're going to inherit, it sounds like.
Well, it depends how you go about it. So because I see this as somewhat of a corollary to Texas becoming independent from the United States. Okay. You have all these Texans who are part of the U.S. Social Security system, and you could just continue to be a new country and have people who are collecting from this U.S. or foreign pension scheme. And Albertans could do the same. They could basically have a grandfathered in or legacy pension system that they were a part of with Ottawa, and then a new system in Alberta. Or the alternative is to, as soon as possible, get out of the Canadian pension system and have everyone in a fresh Alberta one. Getting out, as I said, it is complicated because this has been so mismanaged for a long time, and there have just been band-aids put upon it. And therefore, in my estimation, there's easily $1.5 trillion of unfunded liability in the Canada Pension Plan. And that has been negotiated, or is being negotiated right now, because it's clear that Albertans would support an independent pension plan. It's just a matter of the logistics of getting out, given that it's been so mismanaged and there's been so much hyperbole from Ottawa to resist this.
Okay. Does that, and again, I'm showing my ignorance here of the Canadian system, but does the Canadian pension system have the forced contribution that our Social Security does?
Yes,
I mean, we don't have a choice. Okay,
it's forced, and it's a big scam because when this began, I think it was it's been decades now. I think it was 62 or something like that. It's been a long time, but the contribution was about a quarter of what it is now because as they've mismanaged the funds and paid out more than they could, they've had to keep increasing the taxes, making it more and more of a Ponzi scheme with time. And unfortunately, many Canadians do not understand this.
Yeah, I've always said our Social Security system in the United States is nothing more than a legalized Ponzi scheme. I mean, it
absolutely is a Ponzi scheme. Yeah, it's the same. Yeah. I've got one of the chapters in my book is called the Canada Ponzi Plan, and I just want to go back. I'm going to look back while we are chatting to get some of the numbers here, but it is a Ponzi plan, and it would never cut the mustard in a private operation. It would immediately be seen as irresponsible and unstable. And I just hope that Albertans support. I mean, ideally, I'm more pro-liberty. I don't want to deal with any government pension plan. I just want to invest my money as I see fit. But if there's going to be some kind of pension plan, it should be a defined contribution plan, not a defined benefit plan, which is inherently unstable and rife for political manipulation. Because obviously politicians who are on a short-term electoral cycle, they want to spend out as much as they can and tax as little right now. And of course, that just pushes the debts onto the future generations.
Okay. Well, and what we're finding is they have gone on with this so long. There's not a way forward to get out of what we would call our Social Security system, because there are people my age, for example, that have paid into it all their lives and we're starting to get our return. But what about the younger people? You know, in order to keep it solvent, you need to keep drawing from the younger to pay the older. And how do you transition to a? How do you transition,
Jim?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just get frustrated because this is a misunderstanding. Many boomers think they are collecting what they paid in. They did not. The money was spent. They are spending or getting money taken directly from younger generations who are poorer than they are. It is theft, generational theft, tragically, and there's a sense of entitlement among the boomer generation of the United States and in Canada that is really hurting the younger people. And I think it's atrocious. They're not collecting what they spend. They're not collecting what they put in. They're collecting far more than what they put in. Further, the money's already been spent. You get out of this by facing reality, cutting your spending. There have been books written. It's called The Coming Generational Storm by Lawrence Kotlikoff. Many people have proposed ways to get out of this. You can do it. It's just that we have in the United States and in Canada an unwillingness to face up to reality and an entitlement mentality among older generations who just think they can keep stealing from younger generations and hurting their own future. It's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Just a question.
Go ahead, Fred.
The two, Saskatchewan and Alberta, both have kind of the same mindset. Any other areas around you guys are thinking like you guys that you know of?
Well, this is a
power and unity.
I understand, Mike. Look, there are different values across Canada. Canada is not a coherent nation. Obviously, gotcha. Quebec is very culturally different. And there's also a challenge, and this is the case within Alberta, that there's a rural-urban divide. If you were to go to the rural parts of Canada, it might be of Alberta, it might be 80% in favor of independence, but it would be, let's say, majority against it in the cities. And so most people talk about the fact that rural British Columbia, so if you took British Columbia but took out Vancouver Island or Victoria and Vancouver proper, would be very much in favor of, or share the same values as well, the Western values.
What about areas that are more what do you call it? First Nation, the Inuits, the Northern Territory, they're They don't.
Maybe Kathy
have
wants to
a-
take that one. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Kathy, we kind of lost your sound here. Did you mute us somehow?
This is a complicated question. You know, I'm not a lawyer when it comes to the First Nation status and their discretion in these matters, but there's a big problem in that there's a First Nation industry where a great deal of welfare is given to the chiefs, and they do not represent the interests of the constituents or the actual First Nation people. So there's a divide there, and many people misinterpret or misunderstand what the First Nation chiefs say as representing the people, the actual First Nation ethnic group, and they do not. We had at one of our events where we were speaking in Red Deer just about a week or two ago, and there were First Nations people in the audience who are very supportive, but of course they recognize that many of the chiefs are bought off. They will represent Ottawa's views just because they're on the take.
Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes
That's
sense.
bad.
We lost Angela, by the way. She just texted me. Her internet completely died where she is. So
Yeah.
she apologized, but she said thank you for having her on. So it doesn't sound like she's going to try to get back on. So it's just, well, the four of
Kathy,
us
please.
will continue on here.
Hmm.
So we're down to about 8 minutes. Let me just throw it out to offer you to any last, if there's something that we have not covered that you want to make sure gets said, please take a couple minutes to bring that out. Kathy, you want to go first? Ladies first?
I don't know. Fergus just put his hand up.
Oh, did he?
No, I was saying, please go. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Whichever one. I don't, either way.
Yeah. What would I like to leave you guys with? A real sense that Alberta as a sovereign nation would be an amazing neighbor to the US.
Mhm.
We have a lot in common with you with regards to our industries, our resources, but more than that, we've got so much in common with you guys with regards to our value structure, our value system, what makes us Albertans, what makes us a people. And there are some that say, oh, well, then just join the US and become the 51st state. I can tell you there is like next to no appetite for that here. And not because we don't like you, just because we're good. We're good.
Yeah.
We know we have everything we need. We know that we don't need anybody's help because we have all the resources here to keep the lights on, to keep the homes warm, to keep us fed. And more than that, we've got the people. Like Albertans are a hard working, roll up your sleeves, get up at 5 a.m, get the job done kind of people. And a very proud people because of that. And so we are looking forward to being very, very great neighbors. And, instead of the USMCA, maybe the A will stand for Alberta as far as trade negotiations goes. And it's really exciting to be able to think that we can have that relationship with the US. We could even have a really great trading relationship with Canada.
Yeah.
It will just look different than it does now. And yeah, it's not going to be easy. None of us are under any illusion that it will be, but it sure is exciting to know that there's light at the end of this tunnel and that future generations are going to benefit from the hard work that we're putting in today.
Mhm.
Very well said. Yeah.
I like
Fergus?
Yes, I'm a big fan of Kathy's work, and people should follow her on X and Substack. Now, there's a lot she said there. I mean, it's great. It's absolutely the case that Alberta can and will be a very strong ally or supportive neighbor with the United States. In many ways, let's say, emulating or reflecting the values, the natural rights that the United States seeks to uphold. Okay, the big takeaway to me from this topic is that this is a historic opportunity that has the chance to turn the course of history.
Mhm.
The benefits associated with a free and independent Alberta are enormous. And it would be an incredibly direct, explicit rejection of centralized power. It represents the number one or most promising movement for individual freedom or natural rights on the planet. And I encourage Americans who are friendly to this idea to be supportive online in terms of their communication, but also to support recognition of this new nation as culturally and just fundamentally distinct from the rest of Canada. And while Canada becomes this post-modernist failing nation, Alberta can become a leading light for the world, and that merits recognition, merits admiration.
Yeah. I could see the alliance between U.S. and Canada. Tom makes an interesting point here, though, is that if you team, I'm gonna put it on the screen because he has a wonderful way of putting things. If you team up with the Washington cesspool, you'll lose much. So there has to be great caution in that, because the very similar to your situation with people. The U.S. people, I think, in general, are a good people. The U.S. government, on the other hand, is not necessarily good. We have a lot of our own problems, and just as you see what's going on over in Iran right now, we don't always do the right thing, and I would want, if Alberta becomes an independent country, boy, just that would be great to have just another ally in this, because I don't think Ottawa in the U.S. are good allies right now. There's too much fighting going on between them, but I could see how Alberta and the United States could make something good happen from this. Right. So, hey, it is 9:57. We always, Fred, do you have any final questions or any comments that you want to make?
No, I was just going to say, personally, I think the whole Iran situation is Iran has been a bully to the world. In high school, I used to kick bullies' butts because I didn't like them. So if you're a bully, you need your behind kicked every once in a while.
Yeah. All right. Well, in any case, one thing I want to thank you both, and Angela too, if she's listening, for coming on today. One of the things we always do with this podcast is we always end in prayer, because I think ultimately everything that we do, we have to go to the Almighty to ask for strength and guidance and everything else. And Fred is the prayer warrior on this podcast. So Fred, I'm going to ask you to pray us out of here and hold these individuals up in prayer and the movement that is going on. And I do want to say, before you start though, I almost forgot this. You mentioned Fergus, just I think it was you, maybe it was Kathy, to stay informed of what's going on up there. Is there a website, or is there a place where our listeners can go to find out definitively what's happening in Alberta? Is there a single source?
Yes, stayfreealberta.com. The Alberta Prosperity Project is the other one. X is the most active platform. Kathy, please add your own organization.
Oh, I would follow Keith Wilson. He's incredible, and is part of the team that is taking this forward. He might even be the head of it. I'm not sure. So I would follow him. I would follow Angela, follow Fergus, follow me. Like I said, there's not really a leader, right? There's just a whole bunch of us that are working together.
Okay.
So
great.
Yeah.
All right, Fred, you want to pray us out of here?
All right. Thank you. Lord, I just thank you for this day, Lord. I pray for Ferguson and Kathy. Lord, I ask you to put a hedge of protection around them, protect them, Lord. We know that it just takes a spark to start a fire. So I pray that you continue to influence these people and influence the people that they come in contact with, and even their neighbors in Saskatchewan. I pray, though, that they would get some influence with them too. Nobody wants to be a slave to people who just have money. I ask you to give them their freedom that they're seeking, Lord. Give them direction, give them understanding, give them wisdom from up high, Lord, that we can't give. I ask, Lord, that you would bless everybody who's listening and support these people because they need it, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. And again, thank you too for coming on. We will stay in touch. I've got your information. So and feel free to reach out to us and let us know if there's any wonderful developments that we want to cover. So thank you again. And for everybody else, wherever you are, we hope you have a wonderful day and it's nice and sunny where you are. And above all, be blessed.
And be a blessing to others.
Okay. See you next week, everyone.